is a commandment to wipe out the nation of Amalek. How could there be such a commandment? In fact, if we read the story, it makes the question even stronger. What did this nation Amalek do? The Jews left Egypt. They were on the way to Har Sinai to receive the Torah, and he attacked them. True, terrible thing. But how could you compare that to what Egypt did? They had Yidden as slaves. They were persecuted for hundreds of years, and yet there's no commandment. They should be wiped out completely. And not only they, but all their descendants. How can that be understood? And the answer is, when the Torah talks about certain nations that attack the Jewish people, on the surface, it's like a war between nations. This nation attacks that nation, and there are nations that attack the Jewish people. But in truth, there's something much deeper going on here. These nations embodied certain klipa, certain negative, spiritual negative force. Just like physically, there is certain negative things in the body, like germs, bacteria, that it could do harm to the body. So too spiritually, there is klipa, which is spiritual forces that are destructive. And klipa is impure, and klipa opposes holiness and godliness. And klipa actually hates godliness. The fact that this nation, it's mentioned in the Torah, whether it be Egypt or Amalek or Plishtin or Midian, that they attacked us, it was actually the klipa in them, that evil force that's in them, that motivated them to attack, because that force hates godliness and doesn't want godliness to be in this world. But just like in the physical sense, there are different kinds of germs and different kinds of bacteria. Certain things can be controlled, certain things can be contained, and certain things are so severe that the only way to stop it is by totally eliminating it and getting rid of it. God forbid, certain diseases, if it's in an organ, and we know that it could spread for the rest of the body, and there's no way of stopping it unless that organ is eliminated. There's no other choice. And of course, when we're talking about a spiritual germ, no one understands that except for Hashem himself. He knows the spiritual chemistry. When he gives a commandment that this nation should be eliminated, it means that this is a very destructive force, and allowing them to live would destroy the rest of the world. And therefore, having pity is having pity on these individuals, but it's doing the opposite to the rest of the world. We're actually living through this right now, where we know that the founders and the leaders of Hamas, which unfortunately we know what they've done, who were they? These are people who were in prison, and because we felt bad for them, they were allowed to go out of prison, and as a result of that, thousands of people lost their lives, thousands of people are injured for the rest of their lives, thousands of peoples were destroyed, and that's because this was a kind of a force that had to be taken out. And the same is with Amalek, but on a spiritual level. And you can also think of what we've gone through recently with COVID, that unfortunately this affected millions of people. It was an infection. And imagine, hypothetically speaking, if there was a person that contained this infection, and by allowing him to live, he spread that infection to the rest of the world. Of course, it wouldn't be right to allow him to live and let everybody else, unfortunately, die because of what he did. I want to compare this to a letter that I've seen where a student writes to his professor who just failed him in his course. He was in engineering. And he writes to him that he's pleading for mercy. He spent so much money. He worked so hard to get the money together. He worked so hard on his studies. He tried everything, and he worked so hard, and now you failed me, and look what it's done to me. And he's begging the professor that he should give him a passing mark. The professor writes back, I really feel bad for you, and I feel tremendous compassion for you, but who's going to have compassion for the people that are going to walk on your bridges? Unfortunately, it means if you're not qualified, then there'll be damage done to so many hundreds of other people. And the same here. Only Hashem understands that by allowing Amalek to live, unfortunately, this would cause destruction to the rest of the world. In fact, in reference to Amalek, we see that because they were not eliminated when they were supposed to by King Shaul, one of their descendants was Haman. And Haman's plan was to annihilate the entire Jewish nation, men, women, and children, young and old. It was only a miracle of Hashem that saved us, and that's the miracle that we celebrate of Purim. But here we see that by allowing this person to live, this is what led to, unfortunately, that could have been disaster for an entire nation.